Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Daffodil Diaries podcast with the SFU Canadian Cancer Society. I'm one of your hosts, Sophie Magno, and also marketing co-lead of the club. And as you can see here today, we are unfortunately not joined by Rhea, our other host and co-chair of the club. So it's just going to be me today. But despite her not being here, she is still so incredibly honored to have our guest on this episode today and is still very excited to have this episode out for you guys to listen. In this episode, we are so honored to be joined by Dr. Garth Davies. He is an associate professor in the School of Criminology here at SFU. He is also the director of the Canadian Network for Research on Security, Terrorism and Society, and his work focuses on topics such as radicalization, extremist narratives, and national security. We are here with him today to have him share his experience with throat cancer and how it has impacted his life. He touches on his diagnosis, his treatment, the challenges that came along with it, his recovery, and ultimately how his experience transformed his perspective on life for the better. As I'm recording this right now, we just finished our conversation and I am so moved, so I cannot wait for you to listen to this one. We really hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, Dr. Davies. It is such an honor to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. I know before we started, we were talking about how you teach as well, and you're actually teaching later today.
I am, yeah.
Yeah, so thank you so much for being here despite your busy schedule. And yeah, as you've heard from the intro, I did talk a little bit about him already, but just for right now, how are you doing? How's life? And you can even expand on more about what you do.
Life is good. I mean, it's been 2 years now cancer-free, so that's, or at least, I've been called cancer-free, so fingers crossed with that.
Yeah.
I mean, everything is fine. I'm working with a research institute right now it's very exciting times as far as, unfortunately, there's a lot going on. I study terrorism and political violence for a living, and unfortunately, there's a lot of it going on. So it's it's an interesting time to be looking at that, new things happening all the time. The American government trying to decide whether they want to be terrorists like other groups is kind of frightening, kind of challenging that way.
Yeah.
So, but it keeps me on my toes and it keeps me busy. I have a very large cadre of grad students, and they keep me on my toes. They're all excellent, and so whatever I have a spare minute, there's usually a thesis to read or there's somebody to talk to about what the newest topic is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've always felt very lucky. I mean, I'm sort of just a student of history and a student of the world. So as I said, a lot of it plugs in and is all interconnected. So it's not just the political violence part of it. It's how does that connect what's happening in the Middle East to what's happening in North Africa. I mean, increasingly we're seeing that. I mean, what's happening in the U.S. is often bordering on versions of political violence. So I've always enjoyed the mental puzzle of how it is all interconnected. The history, the economics, the politics. Everything is tied. Things don't come out of nowhere. There's usually a historical background and there's a context, and I enjoy trying to understand that and relate it to what's happening today and where it's going.
Yeah. Absolutely. As you guys know, we are going to be talking about your cancer journey.
Sure.
And also, something that you brought up earlier is that he is going to be drinking lots of water in this episode.
Yeah, so my cancer in particular was throat cancer, and it, as part of the treatment, so I had to have radiation and surgery, but the radiation killed my salivary glands. So I have no saliva, so I have to drink pretty much all the time. I have 2 or 3 minute breaks in between, but I essentially have to be drinking. And of course, as I talk, the more I talk, the more I need to drink.
Exactly.
So, which is unfortunate. So hopefully you'll have to bear with us. Sorry about that.
No, do not apologize. Yeah. So when you teach in classes, you're always drinking.
I walk around with a lot of water. At break time, I have to go. I ask my students not to attack me during break time because I have to go and get more water, right, and fill up my water bottle and do that. I've gotten pretty decent over the years at sneaking swigs of water while they're taking notes. So I give them a whole bunch of stuff, then I sit there and I drink.
I mean, it benefits them too if they want to catch up.
They're perfectly happy. I think they're perfectly happy. It's you take your time, because my natural speaking voice is actually far too fast. I work really hard to moderate it, but I speak very quickly. So anything that slows me down there, my students are happy with. They told me, no, you take your time. We're good. I actually have an interesting, strange story of how I found out. So I was overseas. I was in Ireland for a conference, and I was walking around one day on an off day of the conference, and I do not know what caused me to do it, but I reached up to my throat and I felt this noticeable lump, quite large. What you realize later on is that anything in your body, something can be very tiny, but how it presents in your body, it feels like it's a grapefruit. It's very large. So that was unusual. I came back after I came back home. I made an appointment, saw the doctor. It was unclear at first as to what was going on. I had to do a variety of tests, and then ultimately my family doctor didn't like what he was seeing, but didn't know really what was going on. So he sent me to an oncologist, ears, nose, and throat, in particular. And then they were the ones that were able to determine that I had throat cancer.
Okay. And you were in Ireland, you said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it like finding out all the way, not from home?
Oh no, the finding out happened when I came back.
Oh.
Yeah, I
okay.
apologize. I wasn't clear.
No, okay.
Yeah, so it was the warning sign happened in Ireland, but and it was weird. Like I had never experienced it. So, but I was working. You're overseas. I kind of put it out of my mind. At night I'd feel my neck and like that's weird, but I didn't. It wasn't painful. And so it really didn't affect much till I got home. But then I said, then it was to the doctor and back and forth a couple of times. Doctor didn't like what he was seeing, but didn't really know what was going on. So then it was time to go see the specialist. And it was about 2 weeks after that the specialist was able to tell me what was going on.
And something that he did also tell me earlier was that he found out later in his life too, not as a child.
Yeah, no. My cancer came on when I was 50. For all of us that are 50 out here listening to this, they will all relate to this because weird stuff happens to us when we're 50. You feel, and it's like at 50, you're like cruising along, everything's fine. Then 50, and you fall off a cliff. So unfortunately, my cliff involved having a cancer diagnosis. From the outside, it felt like the size of a small fist. Now it wasn't when you that's and what you realize what I found out later was that's because of all of the other stuff that's involved. So it actually only ended up being quite tiny, but it felt very large. Like it felt as though it was kind of connecting the bottom of my jawbone to my neck. Like it felt like a massive. And then of course, I don't know how I didn't notice it before, but once you see it. And once you know it's there, of course, it's all you can look at.
Yeah.
Right. So now you're constantly going, well, that's weird. What's going on there? So it's just, everybody who's had this has all had the same experience with this, and now you can't not look at it.
Do you have any family history? May I ask, if you don't mind?
My grandfather had prostate cancer, but aside from that, my family history has been actually pretty clear, which is also why it didn't immediately jump into my mind, oh, maybe this is cancer, because it really didn't. Like I thought I had some kind of a weird lump, maybe an infection, maybe something, and the fact that it didn't hurt, like I could feel it, and it felt solid, which was weird, but it wasn't hurting me at all. To this day, I don't know what made me I think just one day I went and reached for it. It's like, oh, that's weird. But yeah, but no pain. But yeah, we didn't. There was no real history of cancers in my family. They said it's throat cancer. The challenge for mine was that at first they didn't know exactly where it was. So because it had metastasized by that point, so they knew where the metastasis was. Well, like where did it start from? Yeah. So it turned out they didn't know that till they went in, and they found out that it was actually at the base of one of my tonsils. And that's where it was. I'm in the unfortunate 20% where to this day we don't know what caused the cancer. Apparently there's from what I'm told, with that kind of cancer, there's about 20% cases where they just don't know where it came from. So, and I realized the difference between a tonsillectomy, which is where they just cut at the base, and what I had, which was where they get right in there and they scoop it and dig it out. It's kind of painful the next few days. Yeah, it's tonsils are bad enough, but it's like ice cream. This was not solvable with ice cream. Yeah. So, which is too bad because I was looking forward to the excuse to drinking or to eating the ice cream. So, but yeah, that was so that when they went in, they were finally able to go, okay, yeah, it had metastasized from the base of my tonsil, so they scooped out both my tonsils.
I also wanted to ask how you were feeling, and you can even touch on the support you got.
Yeah, it's strange. So you go in, because I'm not a youngster, I'm an adult, I did a lot of the original stuff just on my own. So you go in, and even when I went to see the ears, nose, throat specialist, I wasn't really expecting anything. I thought they'd say it's an infection, it's this, that. So I went into the office, then they tell you it's metastatic cancer. It takes a while to process. It takes a couple minutes to process those words. And I didn't have much of a history in my family, so I didn't know a lot. But I was trying to not freak out. I think that's a pretty standard thing in this world, as you hear about it. And then, okay, and you're going to start doing your research and kind of hearing about what's going on. The first 8 days, and I remember that, the first 8 days were really hard because I found out that I had it, but I then needed to wait to talk to a specialist. So 8 days later, was when I was able to talk to the gentleman that would become my oncologist out at Vancouver General. And then I was able to have some idea what was going on. And so, but those 8 days, I'm a university professor. So my first thought is, let's go and research it to death, right? That's what you do. And then the problem is I didn't know enough to be able to do really good research. Because the scary thing about the internet, when you hear you've got cancer, is that unless you know more, you're going to find stuff that tells you it's totally benign, don't worry about it, all the way to, there's a 95% chance you're going to die. Right? That's the challenge, and you don't know. You can't, differentiate. I'm a university professor. I can read things. I can figure things out, but I had it's like I'm getting all over the map. So at that point, I just decided, you know what? Let's just wait to talk to the doctors. The doctors know. The doctors will tell me. So I went and spoke with my first appointment was with the oncologist, who was fantastic, and he walked me through. And right off the bat, he was saying, he was basically saying, look, Garth, we're looking at 70-80% cure rate for the kind you have and what you have, which is, I'm a statistician by training, so I'm like, okay, those are good odds. I'm already in a good mood, right? This is going to be okay. And then a few days after that, I don't remember the exact length of time. It wasn't a few days. It was probably a week or two more. Was when I met with my actual surgeon. So because you have the oncologist, you have the surgeon, right? And the surgeon was this. I didn't find out till later, but is this literally world-renowned expert, Dr. Donaldson, is just an amazing, amazing surgeon. He's the guy who goes around and teaches other doctors in the world how to do these surgeries. So it's like, okay, I'm in pretty good hands. This is good. I got lucky on this one. And so I went into his office, and he looks around a little bit like doctors do, and he goes, "Oh yeah, no problem. We'll just cut that out." I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, no problem at all." And I don't know how much of that is masking, but it from that point forward, I really did feel like this is going to be okay. It's scary stuff. Nobody ever wants to hear the C word, right? Nobody ever wants to hear that in their lifetime. But to be told, it's pretty good. We got this. As I said, I just kind of surrendered myself to their hands. And if it helps anybody who's out there, I strongly find, if you find yourself with a set of doctors that you feel comfortable with, and just listen to what they say. And I know there's all kinds of conversations out there, about, people going to various, sort of MD doctors online and stuff. And I understand what the human impulse is for that and to want to do that. But you are, in many instances, you're probably causing yourself more grief then it's worth it. I was very lucky, and I had incredible trust in both of my doctors, my oncologist and my surgeon. And I just did what they said. When they told me what it is, when they told me what it's going to be, they told me what it's going to do, I'm like, okay. And so when my surgeon says, we're just going to go and cut that out, you go, okay. Thank you very much. I'll take it. I mean, I know that there are lots of stories you can read out there about, maybe doctors that misdiagnoses, or I understand the fear. That's I think one of the things that drives a lot of it is when you hear cancer, unfortunately, a big part of your brain shuts off. And you start, when you start not acting like a normal human being and just thinking, and it's like, and I know that not all doctors, I was lucky. My doctors were amazing, and I had complete faith in them. But it also, what that means is, you listen to what they say. I was, one of the things that I did that I would recommend to anybody. So after I found out, after my brother, who's a few years younger than me, my brother, he came with me to all my appointments. Because there's a real emotional component, as obviously anybody who's listening to this knows. There's a real emotional component, and it's hard to deal with all of the emotions and all of the information and everything. So it's really, right off the bat, I would say, bring in a team to help you. If it's one person, if it's more than one person, but you need someone else there listening. Because a lot of times you're focusing on am I going to die or am I not going to die? So you need to have all the rest of those bits and pieces. But I was lucky enough that very soon my brother was able to be there and tell me and to hear what they were saying. As far as, what is the likelihood that this is going to do? What's all of this going to look like? And so that part, I was always very grateful for having family that was able, because the truth is not everybody has that. But once so I strongly recommend try to have somebody, because it's really the emotional part of it and the intellectual part of it, reconciling those two things. And you don't always realize, like, I would come home and my brother would say, well, what did you think about this, and this? And the truth was, I had no recollection of them saying it. I didn't realize that they had told me that. At any given time, I may have been thinking, and I'm trying to focus, right? I know what he's saying is important, right? It's not like I'm just like, la, 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 la. I'm trying to focus, but, when those emotions are there, it's hard not, and anyone who's had this, on the broadcast here, you're part of the conversation is like, am I going to die? And so am I going to die is a pretty big question. And so sometimes it's hard to get past that question. In your head, you're doing your best, you're trying to focus, but I can tell you, it doesn't always work. So strong, in the strongest terms, one of the things I was always very thankful for was my brother and my mom being able to come with me to my appointments and to help me sort out, and make sure that I heard what I was supposed to be hearing. Was really important to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I'm so glad you had those.
Me too.
Systems.
Me too.
I was also really curious to ask how this impacted your career, because you were also teaching at this time.
I was, yeah. And the truth was, I was very lucky. So I wanted to minimize. I had a lot of things going on, and we all do. Everyone's a busy person, but I had things that were going on. So I was able to time it so that I essentially missed. I missed one teaching semester, and that was a spring semester. So then I was able to go, and then I don't teach in the fall. So essentially, I had 8 months from when I had the surgery right at the end of the year. Actually, I had the surgery in December, and then was able to kind of take the 8 months off. And by the time I could come back again.
Can I ask what year this was?
That is a very, very good question. So it was that would have been in 2018.
Okay.
Yeah, it would have been 2018. And I was very lucky. I'm surrounded. One of the advantages of having a whole bunch of extra grad students, I have too many grad students, but my grad students were fantastic in picking up some slack and stuff. My department, my director, Martin Bouchard, was amazing in terms of trying to help me work around it. I was lucky that the recovery was manageable. So, 8 months later, I was able to come back into the classroom and stuff. It took about another 6 or 8 months after that till my voice was 100%. Most people didn't know, but I knew. I sounded really weird. Like I how nobody likes to hear the sound of their own voice when you're being recorded, but I didn't even recognize it anymore. It's like, okay, normally I don't like it. So yeah, it changed everything. So, but it's mostly the way it once was again. I mean, the surgery itself is quite standard, by their standards. I mean, it's not particularly complicated. They went in there. By all accounts, it was pretty quick. Again, my surgeon is this, maestro of doing these things. I think he went and chopped it up. And I remember, waking up and asking, how did it go? Yeah, everything's fine. He was one of those kind of guys. Like, everything's fine, everything's good. We go. But the big truth was, what you want to hear is your margins are clean, right? Everybody in cancer world wants, that's what you want to hear, right? Your margins are clean, and my margins were clean. So right off the bat, it's like, okay. And then you start, then the pain starts coming, and then you start, you're trying to, but it's amazing how much pain you can, and it wasn't devastating pain, but it also was limited by the fact that you feel like you're fixed. Mm-hmm. You're going into this thing with something that is really bad inside your body. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, okay, now it's not there anymore. Yeah. And, now it's good. So, I mean, I had some interesting experiences while I was in the hospital, just because hospitals, they did my surgery in Abbotsford. At the cancer clinic that they have in Abbotsford there. And of course, I was a busy hospital, so they had to move me around. So I started off originally I was in geriatrics, which is an interesting place to be, because there's a lot of strange things happen in geriatrics. But then they're like, okay, so then they moved me into a place with younger kids, which I thought was fun. Yeah, that was interesting, So, but the after you hear, we got it all. Your surgeon says to you, we got it all. We feel like we've got it all. Your edges are clear. You're like, okay, it's going to be all right. So everything after that, you just kind of, for me, I was just in kind of autopilot. Like whatever they wanted, whatever you wanted me to do. So it's pain. I mean, the first couple of weeks afterwards are pretty painful. You're out of it a lot. Yeah. They know it's painful, so they kind of got you on a bit of a system, and and then I spent a few weeks after that actually staying at my mom's house because I had quite the drug regimen. That you have to be doing, right? And, and I didn't trust myself. And so they were at my mom and her partner are retired. And I was lucky enough that I was able to stay with them. And my mom is fantastic. So she would, set out my drug routine. I had, all of us that have gone through this, we're all used to it. You got, all of your pills and how many you do. And she did that, which again, it was incredible load off my mind because I was, I was able to just, a lot of times I didn't want to think about anything. I just wanted to kind of float with it. Sometimes I would play crossword puzzles on my pad, and then sometimes you just want to go. As I got a little bit stronger, I would go for a walk, and and that felt good. It feels normal again. You're doing something normal, kind of doing that. So I felt very lucky the way it all came together.
Amazing. Backtracking a little bit. So
Please.
How long did you have this tumor here before the surgery?
Yeah, that's a good question. It ended up being, so the tumor I discovered towards the end of the summer. So by the time it was diagnosed, figured out what it was, got it scheduled for surgery, was about 4 months. 4 months. Which I feel quite lucky. That's not an unreasonable length of time. Yeah. I genuinely felt all the way through the thing that the people that were dealing with my case had my best interests. Yeah. I feel like if there had been something more serious, not that cancer isn't serious, but there are, it didn't appear to be a fast growing. That was the thing. It was strange because it came on very sudden for me, but then it wasn't growing. They were checking it. It's not growing. And so they were reasonably confident and made me feel reasonably confident. And so it was about 4 months from the time it was diagnosed to the time I was actually in the operating room.
So throughout those 4 months, it was just sticking out day-to-day life?
Yeah. I don't know, I should have asked people. I don't know whether it was noticeable enough for other people. When it's you. Oh, yeah, of course, all you could do is feel it with your hand, and it feels like it's basketball on your head, right? So, but it's funny now that we're talking about that. I really should ask my brother and my mom, who were closest to me that time. Was it noticeable? Because up until then, certainly nobody had said anything. Right, when I was in Ireland, I was in conferences all the time. People were around me. I was talking to them. Nobody mentioned anything. So I don't know. I don't know, but yeah.
Are there any images or pictures you can possibly look back at?
There are not. I am, it's very strange, I am a very camera-aversive person in general. Seriously, as normal, I'm the person that if you have a group photo, I'm the guy at the back hiding behind the really tall guy, kind of peering around his shoulder. So no, I don't have any pictures of that time, which is strange, yeah.
So during the recovery process, how did that affect you?
Honestly, I was really lucky. There wasn't anything. I mean, I was told not to talk a lot because it's put a strain on my vocal cords. At first, I felt very weak, so I wasn't allowed to. But I wasn't itching to go and do a lot physically. But there was nothing that there was really nothing they said that I couldn't do. I was told that, as when you're a kid and if you get your tonsils out, they're like, ice cream and cold things will help. So, I use that as an excuse to eat it, to eat ice cream. And to drink cold things. But other than that, I was really, really lucky. There wasn't a lot that I was barred from doing. So I like to stay active, and I eventually, like a lot of people, I started to get a bit stir crazy. So you're walking that balance between, I know I don't have a lot of energy, but just lying here on the bed looking at the ceiling isn't going to cut it anymore. So so I was able to start with small, go around the block. And then, go around the block a couple times a day, and then extend it out, further and stuff until you get to the point of where, and the thing too is I lost 40 pounds during all this, because I wasn't you're not eating properly. Like you're doing your best, but it really hurts, right? Yeah. So even ice cream, like you can it's cold, you can still feel it when you're swallowing it and stuff. So you're not really super motivated to eat. So I lost about 40 pounds, and then so you combine that with now you're 40 pounds lighter. You haven't been exercising too much, so you physically. I mean, I was told, but later on, my family was like, "Yeah, you look pretty rough." Like we were kind of worried about you, because in the moment, I actually didn't feel terrible. I mean, I wasn't going to run marathons, but I wasn't doing much either. Like I was lying in bed, and I'd get up and I'd walk around a little bit, it's pill time, go and take my pills, and wake up in the morning if mom and her partner were there, and I would chat with them for a few minutes, then go back into my bedroom, and you're not really doing much. I was really lucky to have that kind of support where I didn't have to be worrying about buying groceries or doing, it was all there. I just wandered out of my room, took pills, went back into my room, kind of did whatever. So, and then eventually got strong enough to there were complications immediately after the surgery in terms of not being able to get enough fluids. So, a couple times I had to go to the hospital and spend a few hours there getting intravenous fluids and stuff, because it really hurts. It really, in your throat, at the risk of something, but, it's like you don't want to drink anything that even if it's really cold water, it hurts. It doesn't feel comfortable. And then, of course, then now, okay, you've lost too much weight and you're not strong, and you got to now build all of that up. So, but eventually was able to work through that. As the pain goes away, you're hungry. You actually do want to eat some stuff again. But it was a long time. I don't remember exactly how long, but it was a long time before I was back to solid food, of course, right? Got used to eating a lot of soups. Yeah. So radiation was interesting for me because it's radiation. It has to be in a very pinpoint spot. So they created this hard plastic mesh mold of my body. So basically, when I would go in, I would lie on my back, and they would pin me to the table with this mesh, and this hard plastic, half body cast on me, which was funny at first and then weird after a while. So, so I did radiation for 8 weeks. And it was and it was my reaction. It was pretty good for the first few weeks, but then you combine radiation with the way your throat is. That's when you stop eating. That's when you just don't feel like putting anything into your body whatsoever. And it's like the brain part of you goes like, you've lost 40 pounds. That's not a really good way to go, Mm-hmm. But you're just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. So it's weird because it's this you're fighting against your own body, knowing it's a stupid thing to do, right? Yeah. It's like I'm not an idiot, but I'm acting like an idiot. It's like, oh, okay, all right.
But I'm so glad that you took initiative, right? And you still went on walks. You still tried your best to be active.
I think it's really, you never want to be the guy who's like going to give advice to everybody now, and I'm not that guy. I'm always really happy to talk about it. But you're not Solomon now because you went through cancer. It was just a thing that happened to you. But it is important to try to get up and move around and to try and extend it and to try to push. It's not comfortable. It's not comfortable, but it does. When I would speak with my doctor, they would tell me, look, it's going to improve your healing time if you try to do a little bit and a little bit more and a little bit more. And so that's what I did. Like you don't want to go crazy. You don't want to overdo it. But, your body's been through a ton. You got to retrain it. You got to go out there and do those things. It's not going to be comfortable. And I won't speak for other people that have had it in other places. It's unlucky enough. I mean, in my neck, it's uncomfortable when it's up here, but I can walk around, exactly. Right? I'm walking around. It's not like it's in anything that's going to affect that. I can move around. Mm-hmm. So, and after a while, I started to look forward to it. To look forward to getting out and stuff again, it's like, because it starts to normalize. Like, oh, okay, I'm walking around like a normal person now and stuff, except for the giant bandage that's holding my, because we used to joke about it, it's your neck, right? So the cut on your neck feels like they've half cut your head off. So, you're now walking around feeling with this giant bandage holding your head together. Yeah. So, but aside from that, it just felt good. Every time I went outside, it felt good. It felt better. Every time I felt better, and just fresh air, just anything felt better. Then you slowly but surely, I guess, is probably a mantra many of us are used to. But just you pick away at it, and you pick away at it, and eventually things become normalized.
As a cancer survivor, has there been a difference in how you look at life before cancer, before and after, and how much it has changed your perspective, appreciating life more, appreciating your body, taking care of your body?
Yeah, so it's always been a fascinating question because I didn't think much about my like a lot of people, I suppose, I didn't think much about my mortality till someone comes and tells you have cancer. Then all you can think about is your mortality. So, but I mean, how have I, in terms of how have I changed? There, in some ways, very noticeably, it is very hard now to get me wound up about many things. There is a certain perspective that comes with just appreciate the fact you're alive. And you don't want to be overly dramatic about it. That's not the point, but it is, when you sit back and in your quieter moments, you say, hey, all things being equal, if you don't do anything about it, you die. That's what cancer is, right? It's going to kill you if you don't do something. So, and you didn't, and you're here still. So a lot of the things, if I'm being very honest with you, and I'm trying, I was prone to be easily upset by things. We used to call it, I used to wig out about small things, and not anymore, because there is some perspective to be gained from these things, and I'm very thankful for that. And I'm always thankful for having cancer, but if you want to, what are the takeaways from it? Is that it makes you realize how many of the things we fret about, how silly they are. And I'm not saying nothing is important, nothing matters. That's also not correct. There are things that really matter in this world. And you start to realize, family, friends, kids. I have a couple of daughters, and my very first thought when I was diagnosed, I remember it crystal clear. My first thought was, I can't die. I have 2 daughters, and they're too young. They're not ready for this. They're not ready for life without me yet. Mm-hmm. And so but I was. The perspective that you gain is like, really? That's going to aggravate you? Does that really matter? You don't want to go around sounding like some kind of Zen master, right? So you don't talk about it too much. But amongst myself, I really started to notice it's like, it takes a lot more now to get me going. I just don't care, because it's like I'm alive. And that really is what it comes down to. It's like, you could be dead. You're not. That's good. Let's go with that, shall we? So, I find there is some peace to that. And even now to this day, like if I start to get wound up about things, because, it's always within all of us as humans, and, you can start to feel my temperature rise, and it's like, really? Is it worth it? Does this matter? And, some things still do matter. You still do have some, but a lot of it is just, nah, just no, it just isn't. So, I mean, that I think was the biggest learning point for me, was, and the biggest change that happened to me along the way was just this idea of really trying to focus more on what really does matter and not letting the little things get to you. In the old book about, and it's all little stuff, so much of it is out there, and you realize, I mean, when you spend time, when I was having my radiation treatments, you'd spend a lot of time sitting in oncology rooms and labs, and with people who don't make it, or people who aren't going to make it, and so there is some perspective to be gained from that as well. It's like, without becoming a prophet about it, but it's like you got lucky. I always felt very lucky about the fact that right from day one, I had a treatable form of cancer. Yeah. There are people that have much worse, right? And that's just a reality. And I was all, to hear the words, yeah, we're just going to cut it out, everything's going to be fine. It's overwhelming at first, the emotions that you feel with that. Because, I think that one of the hardest things, and I'm sorry I'm bouncing around a little bit, one of the things that was a challenge for me was and I suspect for most people, is just the complete unknown. It's like, okay, now you have cancer, now what? What does that mean? Am I going to die tomorrow? What happens? What's going on? And so that process of trying to sort through all of that information, and again, I cannot stress enough how wonderful I felt to have my doctors that gave me really what I felt was really accurate, realistic expectations of what was going on, but kind of just laid it out for me, and that I was always very, very thankful for. Yeah. So then, but this, and even though, I'm in remission now, I feel like that attitude of, really, does it really matter? I feel like that helps me with living my life. I feel I'm much more at ease now. I don't get wound up. It takes a lot to get me wound up about stuff, just because you don't always verbalize it, but you think in your head, it's like, this could have gone a way different way. Exactly. right? A lot of people get diagnoses for cancer and it ain't nearly as positive as yours. You know, some people go into that hospital and they don't come out. And yeah, I mean, and I don't want to upset anybody, but when you're in there and you see, you're at a BC Cancer Clinic, so you see children. You see things that you shouldn't have to see, that they should never have to experience that. And so to come out of that on the other side reasonably unscathed, just feel very fortunate, feel very lucky all the time. I do. I feel lucky every day. That I'm here still. I'm here for my daughters. I'm here to experience those things. And, it's just now one of those things that becomes part of what your background is, part of who you are.
Yeah. Like you said, from the moment you found out, the way you were treated by your doctors, the amount of trust.
BC Cancer, I cannot say enough good things about BC Cancer. Yeah. And I know there are some provinces that don't have that, but I mean, I cannot say enough about BC Cancer Agency, about the doctors that I had, the professionalism, how together they were with everything. I always felt like I knew what was going on. I always felt like they had my best interests at heart. And I think that's critical, because when you hear the words cancer, I felt like, I always say jokingly now, but you feel like half your brain shuts off. It's like you're not hearing anything. You're just, all you're hearing is the word cancer, cancer, cancer. Flashing in big letters in front of your eyes. And again, I'm always very grateful to my family, because they were there to help me through all of that. We had to hide it for a while from my mom, because we knew it would be really upsetting there until we had. After I found out that I had it, we had to wait a couple of weeks till we knew what the treatment plan was going to be and how is it going to work out. Then we went and told my mom. It's very upsetting to hear that your child has cancer. But I again cannot say enough about the systems that we have in place here in British Columbia. Because it is so scary to hear the words, and to have people that when you go into their offices, you genuinely feel like they care about you. It matters. They want what's best for you. They want to explain what's going on. They're willing to be there. It means everything. It means everything, because it is really scary. And no matter how many people are with you, are on your side, it's the loneliest feeling in the world when you first hear about it, right? You're basically being told, if you don't fix this, you're going to die. Now, right? At least that's how my brain interpreted it, right? It's like, we don't do something here, you die. Okay, let's do something about it. And like I said, I was very lucky, right? From the, it was very clear that I had a treatable form of cancer, and many people have many more challenges, and I want to be very clear about that. I'm not equating myself, as you know, from working with the agency. Some people, some cancers have much better cure rates than others, and mine did really well. But I was always very, very thankful for the professionalism and the support and stuff that I had from BC Cancer Agency, from my doctors, from everybody, and just feeling like these people know what they're doing. That was really, really comforting, because I didn't. I'm kind of a medical idiot when it comes to those things. Like, I teach criminology and I know lots about some things, but I'm terrible with medicine and body stuff, and they're telling me in very professional ways what to expect, what's happening, what's going on. Could not have asked for anything better than that. If you're going to go through an experience like this, maybe try and learn and grow a little bit if you can along the way. And I didn't set out to I'm going to be a better person now. But it just seemed to me to be a natural outcome of this, that I found myself going like, really? That's going to get you upset? You could be dead. My daughters were quite a bit younger at the time. They were just in my oldest was just into her teens, and I could have left them without their dad. And I'm thankful that didn't happen. But it's hard not to take that and kind of try to learn some perspective. I feel is sort of one of the things that it gives you. It's like, you coming face to face. I mean, we're all technically face to face with our mortality, but a lot of us are. If you're like me, you're able to not really think about it too much till it's right in your face. Now it's like, okay, now it's real. Now we're thinking about it.
Closing off a bit, I wanted to tie this back into everything that you're teaching and everything you're learning. So, how has this experience shaped the way that you view everything that you've studied over the years?
It's an interesting question. I haven't given it as much thought as I should have, but now you're prompting me to want to do it. So, I mean, I have a very weird field of expertise, because I study political terrorism and political violence, which is a sort of a strange thing. But, I mean, it absolutely has brought a shift in terms of how I think about the way the world functions. and the way the world is. And I always say, like, you never want to sound like you're getting too far down the guru path, with my flip-flops. But there is entirely too much from my perspective, there's entirely too much that people focus on that detracts from their enjoyment of the things they should be focusing on. I see, at the risk of, I don't mean to insult anybody, but I see what's happening down across the States in the U.S. right now. And, the focus on things that you just find, it feels mean-spirited. And you're like, how is that good for you? How is that good for a legacy? How are you contributing positively? And I think that is an element of one of the things that I tried to be, a bit with a takeaway is, okay, you're still here. You still have time. Now you've been granted this extra time, How can you help? How can you appreciate more? And you hate to sound like a cliche, but you do. When you've been told you have this thing in your body, and if you don't do something with it, it's going to kill you. Okay, so you get that thing taken out of your body. Now you feel like you've been given a reprieve. It's like, what are you going to do with that reprieve? What are you going to do with that time now? And I'm comparatively lucky. I'm at a weird age because usually, for a lot of cases, the cancer gets you, when you're very young or when you're older. And I'm in this kind of weird stage, but I still got enough time left. It's like I really want to appreciate what I've been given. I think that's really, really important, just a feeling and experience of this could have gone a different way. And for a lot of people, it does. There's a lot of people out there every day that are going to BC cancer clinics and are being told they have stage 4 lymphoma, and it's like, that's a bad day, and my heart breaks for those people and for their families. I am under no illusion as to how lucky I was with all of this. When you have that, I've tried to turn some of that into just a realization of how lucky you are. Be positive. Be as happy as you can with your circumstances. Little things don't get me, as much as I used to, because it's like, really, you're going to worry about that? You could be dead. You don't want to be, blasé, but it's like, you're going to worry about whether your sandwich has too much meat on it or whether, this fell and broke. It's like, yeah, right. Who cares? Whatever. Like, you're still here, and I get to see my kids grow up. I get to see my kids graduate, and for me, and I think everybody needs to find their own thing. What is your thing that continues to give you joy and happiness? What is it that it makes you happy that you're still here? Appreciate the fact that we're still here. Day to day, life can suck. Life is shitty sometimes, right? We get traffic tickets and things happen and we fight with the people at work and things are going crappy. And I get all that. I'm not, again, I haven't become a prophet. But when you are put in a situation where all of that can be taken away from you, it's amazing how you then can look at it and go, I wouldn't mind a speeding ticket right now if it meant I was here to actually get it. People would say, okay, I'll take the speeding ticket, or and sort of, and I am also very grateful for the perspective it has given me. Now, as I reach, again, I'm not ancient, but I'm moving towards getting older, and I'm grateful for the perspective. I don't lose my temper nearly as much as I used to. I don't get wound up nearly as much as things as I used to, because you have that nagging thing in the back of your head. You could be dead, right? A little voice in the back of your head going, it could be different. You could not be here to be having this at all, so shut up and, kind of enjoy it. And I really have enjoyed the peace. It sounds strange, to get peace from cancer, but I've tried to take the experience and be more at peace with the little things that get to you, and the little, life is hard. Yeah. Life is hard for everybody out there. There's always stuff, and I'm not trying to minimize any of that, but it is, for me, it was. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have been able to get the perspective and to still be here to live that perspective. You don't want to sound like like pop psychology, but it's a short time we've been granted here, right? Some of us shorter than others. When one of the things when you are a cancer survivor means you've spent time in cancer wards and you've spent time on those hospital floors and you've seen, children who have gone into cancer wards who are not coming out. And you've seen the devastation that it has wreaked on families that have lost mothers, that have lost fathers, sisters, brothers. And, you can react to that in any number of ways. I always felt, for me, that what I always wanted to focus on was just the gratitude of still being there. Right, when I was first diagnosed, my children were still my two daughters were still quite young, and again, my first flooding thought was, they're not ready to be without you yet. Like, I needed to still be there for them. Now, if we had our ways, we'd be with our daughters forever, but it's going to end at some point. But at that young age for them, I just felt like, I still have things that I need to do, and I'm incredibly grateful now that I've been granted that extra time in order to be there. With any luck, I want to be there to walk them down the aisle. I want to be there. I have wonderful conversations with both my daughters now. They're 18 and 21, and I'm in a situation where I have they're adults now, and I have really great adult conversations with them, and we have a lot of fun. And I'm thankful that I didn't miss out on those things. I'm thankful that I had the opportunity and continue to have the opportunity to see them grow up.
Yeah, amazing perspective. When things like this happen, it really does give you a mindset shift.
Yep. You cannot know what it's like to hear the words or the variations of the words "you have cancer" until you hear them. Nobody knows how they're going to respond. Nobody knows how they're going to react. You think you do. You probably have some idea. You don't. You have no idea. If you're ever in that situation, wrap yourself as best you can with people who care about you, that are around you. They want to help you. They want to be supportive. We're really fortunate in British Columbia to have the BC Cancer Agency, who will support you in every way that they can. And there are professionals that can help. You're not in it alone. And that there are people that can help you traverse these very, very challenging times, and they want to help you. Your family wants to help you. These professionals want to help you. Let them help you. You'll be better off for it.
Amazing. So that is going to be a wrap for this episode. On behalf of CCS, our club, we thank you very much for being here, and for all you do at SFU and your faculty and all the work you do. I wish you guys all a very amazing day, and I wish you an amazing rest of your day and semester as well.
Thank you very much for having me on.